Hello, welcome to Scary Thoughts, Horror, Philosophy, Culture. I'm Mark Kate.
And I'm Chad Lott.
This is episode 70. We are also simultaneously doing an episode of Self-Help for Nihilists, and that would be episode 3. So, do you want to tell them about what this episode is?
Yeah, we normally do our show face to face in your recording area. And now, because of the social distancing, we are afar from each other. This is our first remote conversation, which this sort of podcasting I've done a few times with other people's shows, and it is not to my liking. But I thought I thought it would be interesting to just see where we're both at. Just to kind of a check in. We haven't really looked at any particular horror movie or franchise for this episode. It's really just more of the horrors of lockdown and the age of coronavirus.
Yes. All right, real quick, you can email us at whatthe@scarythoughts.org. And you can sign up for our newsletter at scarythoughts.org as well. And the email address, we actually put the word out on social media and personally, and got some people to sort of send in for a Q&A. We sort of put out the word for a quarantine Q&A. And we got a bunch of responses that'll be fun to go through here.
Yeah, I got a couple too through the Instagramming. Most of them are along the "Hey, I just watched whatever because I have tons of time. Have you also watched whatever?" And
Right.
a lot of times, sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes the answer is no. And we should probably also make a comment about the sound quality. So if this is your very first episode of Scary Thoughts / Self-Help for Nihilist, normally we have this beautiful sound because of your awesome audio nerdness.
Thank you.
This is done via Zoom, and I'm on an iPhone. I don't know what you're doing, but
I'm on my computer, but still.
Yeah, it's not the worst, but it's not the best.
Yes, I usually take a lot of pride in the audio quality of our podcast, and oh well.
I just read Don Coscarelli, the director of Phantasm and Beastmaster. I just read his autobiography, and one of the things he notes is that if there's one thing that will elevate a horror film from super indie bootstraps to actually sounding pretty good, it is the sound quality. He said it's not cheap to do, but it's easy to do, and it's the one thing all horror filmmakers should concentrate on if they want to look legit or sound legit.
So, to all you horror filmmakers, if you want to be making legit films, give me a call. Yeah. I'm your guy.
It doesn't seem to have stopped Suspiria, though.
What?
The original Suspiria, the sound all over the place with that. Yeah,
it really is. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Do you want to start with the Q&A?
Well, let's see. A lot of questions of, have you seen the Tiger King show? A few people asked about that. It's this tiger Netflix show with some degenerates raising tigers in Florida. I have not seen it yet, but I believe our plan is to do an episode about it coming up because it's such a weird phenomenon.
Yes, ditto. I've had a lot of people ask and suggest, and yeah.
Yeah, I'm sort of not really looking forward to watching it because it just looks like somebody's taken a Jerry Springer episode and turned it into a Netflix original. And I don't know, mixed feelings. We'll see.
Yeah, I have a feeling it's going to be sort of like the documentary version of Bird Box.
Mm-hmm.
Just moderately competent thing that Netflix has somehow wrangled everyone in the world to simultaneously be excited about, whether it's actually good or not.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Pix by Endora wrote us in and asked, have you watched The Outsider on HBO yet? Have you? You don't get HBO, do you?
No, I don't get HBO.
Yeah, I get HBO. And I watched The Outsider. It's a Stephen King adaptation. I really quite liked it. I liked the first 2 episodes the most, when the question of whether something supernatural was going on was still up in the air. And I felt that as soon as it became clearly supernatural, it got just kind of progressively less engaging. And it's shocking how much it's exactly like the movie Part 2, because it's basically the Losers Club or whatever they're called. It's a bunch of guys and one woman and they all go to do battle with an incarnated evil entity in a cave. Pretty much exactly what you could describe both as.
Yeah.
The acting is pretty damn good, especially the lead woman, who I'm not familiar with her. I can't remember her name. She's an amazing character and a really great actor, and I think the show is actually worth watching for her almost alone.
That's good to hear. What kind of a new horror ingenue out there in the world?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, want to take the next one?
Yeah, I got another question from another of my friends was, hey, if I wanted to get a firearm to survive this apocalypse, what should I get? And that is I think that there's an entire genre of YouTube channels based on this question. The shit hits the fan if you could only have one gun thing.
Yeah.
And my main suggestion would be if you don't already have familiarity with firearms, now is not the time to go get one. But because here's the deal, like you can't, in my opinion, have a firearm around without some sort of training. I mean, you can, like, obviously you can, like, there's an entire really hilarious bit in Burt Kreischer's new special about about just this thing, about just going in and buying a gun and knowing not what to not do with it. But I mean, just to be able, I mean, if you can even go buy a gun right now, like in California, I think most of the places have been decided that they're non-essential services. But yeah, I wouldn't go out and make this the time to get your first gun because you can't get any actual training. But if you had some training, had no guns, and were to go get one thing right now, and it was like home defense, I think just a basic off-the-shelf Remington 870 shotgun would be the way to go. Either that
a
or
shotgun.
Oh yeah. I mean, somebody comes in the dark, you don't really want to have to like aim. You just point, and that's the end of your looter. Either that or like a basic Glock 19, one of those two basic things. But all this mall ninja shit where people go crazy with AR-15s and shit for their house, I don't know, man. Not in the city anyway.
I would also think that if you lived in a rural area and you were not a hunter, and if the shit was really, really coming down, maybe something that could be also good for hunting if really you were going to have to start getting up your own food. It obviously doesn't apply to either of us, but I'd imagine that would be a consideration if you actually lived near wildlife of any sort.
Yeah, well, that's what's cool about the Remington 870 or even the Mossberg 500 shotgun is you can use slugs, and you could go hunt a deer with that if you needed to. But again, if you don't know how to do any of that shit, you're fucked. There's no time to learn it now. But once this all dies down, I think anyone who's even thinking about that should really consider investing in training and whatnot.
Good advice.
Yep.
All right. My friend Kevin Clark wrote to Instagram, I think you saw this one. Will you please discuss Strindberg and helium? And I think I can play just an excerpt of what Strindberg and helium is off of YouTube right now. I'll just play a few seconds. Let's see if this can get picked up by Zoom.
Oh, helium. Listen to the happiness. It brings me misery.
Anyway, it's just very dark nihilist.
I think for some people, this shit would be great. For me, who hates cartoons, I couldn't get through more than a couple of them, but I do kind of appreciate it. If you're a Rick and Morty type, I think you'd probably really like this.
Oh, for sure. And also, it also reminds me of things like Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, or Salad Fingers, or things that are more specifically YouTube nihilist animation oriented. Well, I guess Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared is not technically animation, but anyway.
Yeah, I still don't get why I just don't like cartoons so much, man. It's just a weird thing. Like, I check all the other boxes around it. You'd think I'd have a Foot Locker full of bootleg animes, but I just don't.
Yep, I get it. All right, what else you got?
Let's see. Another question was, do you think 5G network has anything to do with this coronavirus outbreak? And that is so there's okay. So I am not one to believe in any of the the situation now was caused by any of the number of conspiracy things. I don't think it's a weaponized virus, blah, 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 blah. I don't believe any of that. Do I think that people are probably really just jumping backflips trying to take advantage of the situation right now? for sure. But
course.
that's just basic shock doctrine type shit that we've all known about forever. But as far as this being like from aliens or developed by the Chinese government to get back at America or vice versa, I just don't buy any of that. I've read a lot of books about these types of diseases over the years, and honestly, the wet markets are pretty much the perfect way to design this shit, and human folly is more than enough explanation. And then I started looking in the whole like fears of 5G network shit, and it just seems like kook city to me, man.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, even reining back from the conspiracies that are that out there, I'm finding quite a bit of fatigue of people's just total misunderstandings of basic health. And I mean, we spoke a bit about this on our Contagion episode, but not only is this not from aliens or a weaponized virus, it's like there's nothing you're doing that is going to prevent this from happening that isn't being recommended by the WHO or the CDC. And
Yeah,
that's that.
and they're not perfect. You know what I mean? They're just like regular ass people doing jobs.
Yep.
Think about whatever job you have. The smartest people that you work with, they still fuck up all the time.
Sure.
And that has got to be the case for. I mean, for example, yesterday there's a knock on my door. I look out the window, and there's a couple paramedics outside. I'm like, holy shit, somebody in our building is in trouble. So I go up, open it up, and they're like, hey, is this blah, 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 blah. It's some address that is not our address. Like, no, man, that's this. I think that's like 4 blocks away. They're like, okay, thanks. And they drive off. And those are people who are maybe going to save somebody's lives. And, Oakland's fucked up. It's hard to find, addresses and buildings sometimes. But, that's just an example of something that just didn't go well that could have killed somebody or maybe not,
Sure. At the same time, I think for me, and speaking about the forsythia aspect of the movie Contagion, I feel very, very strongly that, okay, there's lots that the CDC and the WHO don't know and don't understand yet. They're working on it. That's their objective, but they don't know everything. Otherwise, this would be wrapped up already, right? However, the things that the CDC and the WHO do not know, nobody knows. Like, if they don't know, it's not true. Like, whoever's listening to this, there is nothing that the CDC doesn't know. You don't have some secret knowledge or some way to beat it. You're not going to like take some herb or rub some shit on your forehead, or like nothing is beyond the CDC's understanding that you somehow have access to. That is just totally bananas thinking.
Yep.
Yay. Okay.
You have anything else?
Plenty, actually.
Okay. So, that's all. That's all I got through my channels. It sounds like the email was a lot more fruitful.
I reached out. Okay. So Bruno Brichetti wrote, "Hello, guys. Hope you are doing okay. I'm writing this in lockdown from Argentina. I've been reading a lot of interesting dark stuff lately, mainly wondering about the essence of horror in cinema, and found the following quote from Lovecraft. Quote, one can't write a weird story of real power without perfect psychological detachment from the human scene, and a magic prism of imagination which suffuses theme and style alike with that grotesquerie and disquieting distortion characteristic of morbid vision. Only a cynic can create horror, for behind every masterpiece of this sort must reside a driving demonic force that despises the human race and its illusions, and longs to pull them to pieces and mock them." End quote. And Bruno continues, "I find this notion of horror very relevant to the creative forces that drive the genre in cinema, at least in the majority of those films that commit to the destructive urges of horror and delivers on that sensation so particular to it, that feeling of ugly and hopeless despair. In that sense, horror always was a niche and menacing genre. But nowadays it seems that horror, and films in general, has been tamed. Films are made only for utilitarian reasons. It has to have a function, a socio-political message, in order to even exist. It is no longer sufficient as an aesthetic expression or exploration, but it has to be a propaganda for some commentary on the current issues, often dealing disingenuously with serious topics, or having nothing new to say about them, catering to the politically correct in order to get a return on investment. So, my question is, where do you see the genre or cinema going? Can horror be a humanist genre and still be true to its essence? I suspect that we will find stories with real power outside these moral boundaries. That is to say, when the genre is at its most fucked up and detached from the human scene. Absolutely love the podcast. Hope to hear more. Best wishes, Bruno. What do you think?
Well, I mean, my first instinct is to just say, like, horror isn't really just one thing, and that H.P. Lovecraft quote is pretty sexy for sure.
Yep.
But for example, Don Coscarelli from Phantasm, having read his book and seen a lot of interviews with him, I would not describe him as a dark, cynical pessimist. And I would say that his film is really about the fear of death and is successful for that. So I think right there, an example of a successful horror movie made by a non-cynic. So the rest of that, I would probably just think about as like, there's just not one type of horror, right? I think for horror going forward, whatever happens to Hollywood and filmmaking from this economic collapse is going to have more to do with it than anything else. Making a movie is fucking hard when you have lots of money, and now a lot of people are going to have no money, so it's hard to know what'll even happen.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely has been, on that note, there definitely has been this, I wouldn't say explosion. There's definitely this growing YouTube-oriented horror. I mean, cheap animation, like we were just discussing, is one example, but there are more examples of kids with no money making, I wouldn't say horror movies, I would say just weird horror-oriented things, whether it's them exploring CGI just to see what they can do with it and do really creepy things, or sort of almost like personal documentaries that border on horror, like sort of horror autobiographies with an iPhone. And I think it's really pretty exciting for all that stuff. I don't know if it's all collectively really found its voice yet, but there's definitely interesting things happening there.
Yeah, I really think so. I mean, I'm probably going to keep referencing this Don Coscarelli book because I just read it. But like I was thinking about what it was like for those guys to make movies with an 8mm camera, then a 16mm camera, then a 35mm camera. Like you can just out the gate right now with a misspent Pell Grant, probably put your hands on a really good camera and being able to make whatever the fuck you wanted to make, right? But what's the form of it going to be? And I think, like, I'd imagine that we're going to see something similar to almost like Maggie Nelson's work, where it's like this blend of like fiction and memoir and criticism. And I think you'll see a lot more of that because, I mean, there's some bigger YouTube channels that are starting to add production values. Like on the far left, you have ContraPoints, right?
Yep.
Who's been doing that. And then on the far right, like the jabroni right, you have people like Steven Crowder, and they often have like little skits and things, and they're successful, and it's for what they are, and that they are, they're probably as well concepted as an SNL skit is now. I would say both of them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting what you were saying about Maggie Nelson. I quite agree, and that to me is exciting because, as I've said before, we are always on the precipice of believing that cinema is now completely democratized. There's always been a development in the technology for moving pictures that has recently become cheaper and more accessible, and so there's always this belief that now anybody can be Scorsese or whatever, Orson Welles. But the fact is that has never happened. That's not really how it works. Making a movie is a very expensive, very difficult undertaking. It takes a lot of capital and a lot of power for the filmmakers and the studio. But what's happening with YouTube is an entirely different paradigm where people can make small personal documents, autobiographies, just viewpoints to the world. And I think that's very exciting because I like to see a story, like a movie, like a good story, but I also want to hear people's stories. I want to hear what's going on with people, and that's what brings me to things like fiction and memoir and memoir / fiction like Maggie Nelson, or I just finished Machado's In the Dream House, which is
another great example.
fucking incredible. But I would love to see cinema that is more like that. You know,
Yeah.
It takes capital because it requires time, but it doesn't require millions of dollars and hundreds of people to make happen.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, I mean, YouTube is such a force, man. And there's so many like YouTube stars that are just, they get approached by movie agents all the time. And they're like, yeah, go fuck yourself. I'd rather just wake up and do exactly what I want right now, exactly the way I want to, and make all the money. And no one can tell me what to do. And I think, man, that's a pretty cool spot to be in, man. That's about as punk rock as it gets.
Yeah. Although there is, of course, you don't get to keep all the money. YouTube actually does. And that has its own litany of issues. YouTube creators and their constant struggles against YouTube and its algorithms and its payment structure.
Oh, yeah. And YouTube is just fucking unpleasant, too. I mean, like, I was just on our buddy Literary Libations, other podcast that he does with David Ebert, and it's Hyper Modernity. And their show probably gets about the same amount of views as we do, but like they have just the cuntiest comment section under YouTube. And I think it's just something about YouTube just brings out the dickhead in people, man.
It
does. I don't know what it is. I mean, you look at the comments in any video, it doesn't matter how just good it could be. It could be like, here's a blind guy who taught himself how to get around with his own Labrador that he rescued. And like somebody's got some shitty thing to say about it,
Right.
Yeah, it's just so weird. I mean, it's one of the reasons why we've talked about doing YouTube stuff before. I don't have any tolerance for it, man. I'm just not into it.
All right. Next email from Ted T. I just started listening to the podcast after rewatching Return of the Living Dead. Great film. I like your guys' thoughts and views on the film so far. I'm listening to all the episodes in reviews of movies I've seen. I'll surely check out some I haven't seen. Don't know if you saw it, but curious what you both thought of Gaspar Noé's newest film, Climax. Have you seen Climax?
I, of course, have not seen it.
I have. I think it is awful. I think it is a fucking atrocious movie. I think it's an example of a really talented, brilliant filmmaker. What he does with sound and camera movement is pretty incredible. He gets a lot of really unique things in his mise en scène, but I think Climax is a bullshit movie. It's also deeply, deeply racist, and and I try not to roll that one out too often because it's just so easy to have issue with everything as being racist. Because everything is. But that movie is just fucked up, unacceptably. Anyway.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of it, but I am often like really so out of the loop on film. It's embarrassing.
Have you seen any of his movies?
Nope.
He's pretty unique. Irreversible, I think, is one of the most incredible movies ever made. I probably never need to watch it again. But after seeing his other movies, it sort of makes me wonder if its quality was an accident. No, obviously a movie can't be an accident, but most of my favorite movies are accidents. Like Liquid Sky is unquestionably one of my favorite movies. I don't know how the fuck that movie came to be. It's just so baffling.
But any film has to be made with some intent, though. You know what I mean? Like film is it's so hard to get everything right.
Yeah.
So anytime somebody's like, oh, what the fuck happened here? It's like, I don't know. But I think whenever you see, it's pretty common when you see like a really flawed film, you can almost always get into the biography of the film and find out that there were like interfering producers or the director didn't have the final cut. I mean, it's such a common story.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Or the director could do whatever he wanted. Like that's the other side where it goes bad and weird.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Next email is from my friend Hugo Paris. He says, my quarantine is a mixed bag. While I feel challenged, missing my main source of exercise, climbing, I found other avenues to expand my physical energy into tennis and jogging. Those are not quite as engaging for me yet. They do provide an outlet to help keep things somewhat balanced. I'm a French national, and my country of origin is very impacted. I talk to my family and friends often. which tends to make me shift my schedule to European times and expose me to a lot of stress. That's when my physical outlets come into play. It helps evacuating stress and makes me tired so I can't stay up late even if I want to. The first 2 weeks were challenging as I was trying to catch the early stages of the next wave in our rapidly changing artistic ecosystem. I had a breakthrough letting go and embracing this time for what it has best to offer: introspection and studious hours. I'm now spending days working on my studio, Patreon, music, and developing my production services. I'm thankful I have a private section in my house with roommates. They're important in that balance and help me stay social. Now there is so much content coming our way. It seems like everyone is going live, releasing interesting content, and suggesting remote collaboration. Any tip on how to sort through what you consume and contribute to? I mean, I think that there are two things in there. One is about exercise, which you and I should talk about as well. But yeah, I really, as a musician who suddenly has a lot of spare time, actually, we should talk about my spare time as well, because I definitely have been using this time in a very specific way. I became pretty aware very quickly, like, oh yeah, all these musicians, especially ones who are out of work at the moment, now have all this time to create more music and content in general, regardless of what their discipline is. And so there's going to be an ocean flooding the world with people's creativity coming across in the next year. People are finishing albums, people are finishing writing projects, people are posting on Instagram and YouTube constantly. Like, there's just going to be so much happening. And then what Hugo, I guess, is addressing is how do you fucking sort through all this stuff that's going to be coming through?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for the way I sort through is like I have like two channels that I like. Well, I guess three channels I like to look at. One is I like to see what my friends are doing. Like, I listen to my friends' podcasts. I listen to my friends' bands. I think it's really important to support the people around you if you like their work. You know what I mean? If you don't like their work, then help them hit bottom and just withdraw all support. Like that best they get the job at Instacart before they go and tour with their shitty band, I guess. But so that's one. Two is just stuff that is just classic is always worth your time. Or you go read like a novel that is a Pulitzer Prize winning thing that has stood the test of time, that you're never going to regret that. Same thing with like a really great film that you haven't seen for a while, or an all-time great album. Like, just stuff that is just generally considered awesome is never a problem. And then third is, I think just excellence rises, man. Like, I never find, it's so weird. People will like text me or message me and be like, oh, what should I read? I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? I mean, there's so much shit. You could think, oh, I'm into cowboys today, and go find a top 10 well-regarded thing that you probably never even looked at that you could read. Like, it's so weird to me that people have those anxieties.
Yeah, Monique and I were sitting in the living room yesterday, and she literally like finished To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf, put it down, picked up Middlemarch, started on page 1, like without missing a beat. There you go. Read To the Lighthouse and read Middlemarch.
Yeah.
They're available.
Yeah, but to emerging stuff, I mean, it's just going to find you, man. I mean, that's just how it is these days,
Yeah, unfortunately, I feel like what's happened to me with the choice saturation in how much, let's just say music specifically, is I almost only listen to like 2 genres. I feel like my whole life has been spent being invested in all sorts of genres and constantly trying to find the most obscure, weird, unique voices. And now, because all of that stuff is so available, my filter has become the opposite. I mostly just listen to incredibly minimal music, whether it's doom metal, black metal, field recordings, or like new age-ish ambient and dark ambient. Like, that sort of just keeps it sane if I just keep very narrow cast. And it's like the opposite of being adventurous, but it keeps me from just never knowing where to even begin with how much music is out there.
Yeah.
Let's talk about getting exercise during this quarantine. I mean, it's definitely something that well, I shouldn't say everybody I've talked to is like, no way am I going to fucking do push-ups in my damn apartment. And then there are people like me who are doing push-ups in my damn apartment, you know?
Yeah, well, there's definitely two ways you can emerge from this lockdown. One is a flabbier version of yourself, and one is a firmer version of yourself. And, no shame in whichever direction you want to go, but I'm definitely going in the swole direction
Same,
personally.
same.
Yeah. But, mostly because, I mean, there's a lot of like mental health benefits to exercise. My first week at home, I was working from home a week before everybody was made to, because tech offices were kind of like, yeah, you guys don't really need to be here, so kick rocks. And so that first week I didn't really do anything. And this last year or so I've been really basically. Okay, cool, thanks. Sorry, my neighbor has a little package for me here at the door. I'm recording from my car in case you can't edit this out. I completely lost my train of thought.
Well, we're talking about exercise and how we're going to spend this time. And you set up a spreadsheet that I just kind of added myself to.
Yeah. Well, the thing I wanted to do is like, I've had this idea for years that like my fantasy life is I live the Stephen King method of creativity, which is you read 4 hours a day, write 4 hours a day. And I thought it would be fun to just exercise throughout that day. So set up your number of sets and stuff that you would do normally, like, 50 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, whatever, and just break it up through the day and do it throughout the whole day. And so I've always wanted to do that. And I thought, hey, what better time than now? So I set up this spreadsheet of just exercises that I wanted to do every day. And as I do them, I just uptick the number on the spreadsheet. And if I hit the goal for the day, then success. And if not, well, actually, I'll hit the goal every day. But yeah, it's been pretty good so far. I'd say I feel pretty worn down from it. Like, I think exercising all day instead of in a certain part of the day leaves less time to recover. So I feel like my recovery might not be that great, but I will have done like 1,000 pull-ups and like 1,500 push-ups in 2 weeks, after all this. So pretty good. Yeah.
I've never done so many pull-ups and push-ups and sit-ups in a 24-hour period in my life than I am now. And I set up my spreadsheet, which I guess we should share with people that we're both on the same spreadsheet. So there's just like that little bit of accountability. It's not like we're supposed to be watching each other, but just knowing that an extra pair of eyes are on it kind of makes me more likely to reach my goals. And my goals are, it seems different from yours. My goals are just that I do more each day. I'm not trying to shoot for 150 or something like that. It's more that I started with 10 and then the next day was 15 and the next day is 20. It's really kicking my ass. But it's also really helped that I'm hunched in front of a desk all day, and every half hour or so I can go like, okay, I'm just going to do a bunch of sit-ups and pull-ups now. And that keeps my body from being pissed off that it's at a desk.
Yeah, I think I might like split all the workout exercises I've done into an A and a B and add weight. So right now I think it's like 75 pull-ups, 150 push-ups, 150 squats, mace swings, kettlebells, like all that down this row. I basically put down every exercise I knew how to do with just my body weight and set a number for the day. So I think I might just break that up into more of a traditional split, like a 5-day split, and then just go for that number. Another person who worked out like this was Herschel Walker. Like his whole thing was just like high volume all day. Like he was famous for watching TV and getting up and banging out like 50 push-ups at a time and during commercials and stuff like that. Like that's how he says he got super shredded. But he also has multiple personalities, so who knows? But I think after this like 2 weeks, I'm going to reassess and maybe like start a more specific program, like either Wolf Brigade's public assistance project, or I'm really interested in the idea of like working out with bands, like resistance bands. For whatever reason, they're not super controversial, but when I was doing a rehab for my shoulder, I used a lot of bands, and I actually really kind of liked working out with them. I liked the way they made my like muscles feel. So there's a pretty solid program from this dude. His company's called Undersun Fitness that I think I might try out.
Cool. Yeah, resistance bands are great.
Yeah, your buddy got shredded using them, right?
Oh, it's insane. Yeah. Andrea is an interesting example. Like, when Monique and I, when we travel, we pretty much always bring a yoga mat in our luggage. And the idea is, of course, no matter where you are, especially if you're traveling, you gotta do some sort of workout or stretching or yoga or Pilates or something, because that's when your body's going to get the most fucked up. And then we never use it. Like it actually, because you get to another city or, and you're just either being as lazy as you can because you're on vacation, or you're just go, go, go because you've got things to do in that other city. But Andrea, who's from Italy, he's an artist and a fashion designer. He does a lot of traveling. And the last time he came here, he flew in totally jet lagged. Before he went to sleep, he just said, "Where's the nearest pull-up bar from your apartment?" And we directed him. And then before we were even awake, he was out the door and took his resistance bands from his luggage and went to Dolores Park and went and did his workout and came back in time for our morning coffee. Like, he's doing it, he's fully committed. No matter where I am, I have to get up first thing in the morning, go find a pull-up bar, and those resistance bands don't take up that much room in your luggage. But it's also the commitment to actually doing it, right? Not just having the intent.
Yeah, I mean, you got to get after it, man. And that's one thing I realized from all this is that, like, I was like, man, my priorities have been all like, not that they're really off. Like, I've basically been on the right track for the last couple of years, but fitness wise, not at all. Like, that really fell off. Like, I felt like I had gotten everything else going really well, except for that. And I think, I'm trying to use this time to get that fitness up to the level of the other stuff I'm doing. It's hard to balance everything, though.
Yep. Yeah, in terms of how to spend time, I hinted at wanting to do this in our last episode when we were talking about Contagion, but I am actually learning to code. I'm actually taking this time. I'm taking 3 to 4 hours a day and just learning Swift, which is the Apple iOS OS programming language. And my intention is to come out the other side. Obviously, I'm not going to learn Swift I don't know. I don't know how long this quarantine could be. 4 years along. I have no idea what's happening. But obviously, I'm not going to learn Swift in the time that we're all under quarantine. But I do want to have spent this time wisely. And I think actually the most wise thing I can do is to start on a pathway toward a different income stream and to have greater stability, that situations like this don't throw me for such a loop and leave me with a less precarious economic position. And I don't know that I would be able to jumpstart this without this kind of retreat time to really dig in and focus if I was just doing an hour or two a day while I'm also working my day job.
Yeah, I tell you what, man, I'm very hesitant to tell people what to do generally, but I would say that, everybody I know that knows how to code is still employed working from home, and everybody I know who has to work face to face with people like bartending or gyms or whatever are kind of fucked right now. Yeah. And, it's definitely no judgment on that. Like I for years, I was kind of like, man, I totally fucked up. I should have gone into the bar business with my friends that I worked with. And they're all really successful bar owners. And, they just really enjoy their lives the way they have them set up, but they're in a really precarious position now. And then, I just basically went with like, what's the safest route I could go? And it's kind of worked. And definitely there's no told you so in there. Like I've just always been fearful of like a huge downturn in the economy for whatever reason. And I've angled my career to be sort of safe. Right. And that's working now. Like, is it going to pay off huge and I'm going to make tons of money? Probably not. It's not creatively fulfilling for sure. But for right now, it is paying the mortgage.
Yeah.
So full support. But, also I talk about like having diverse skills. Like, this is just one thing that I know how to do that can make money. Like, I'm perfectly happy to do manual labor if I had to on the other side too,
Yep. Okay. The last email is from my friend Philip Wang. You know his work, right? It's the No More Faggots on the Moon. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, you showed me that. Yeah.
Okay.
It's pretty great.
It's pretty great. To our listeners, just go look up The Homosexual Lunar Agenda on YouTube. Is one of my favorite things ever. Anyway, he writes back, nihilists, I guess I'm getting through it by making horrible, funny art and writing. Here's my latest article. And this is something he published on Vox. And he sent it to me word by word, so I'm assuming I can read it here. So here it is. It was the last thing Darlene Holtz expected when she logged on to Zoom mindfulness seminar. I wanted to work with my feelings during the quarantine, the 28-year-old said, but I didn't expect the teacher to be a total stud. The stud in question is 34-year-old Jill Martinez, founder of Lotus Leaf Zen Center and practitioner of some sort of amazing shoulder workout. The 20 participants, most of whom haven't feasted their eyes on such a stack of manly meat since the quarantine began, imagined licking his face and nuzzling his balls as he instructed them to bring their awareness to their breath. The image and sound were crystal clear thanks to Zoom's highly stable streaming bandwidth. I could almost smell his foreskin through the screen. Many in the seminar gasped when the gorgeous Zen teacher lifted his arms during a 4 elements meditation. Jesus fucking God, look at his armpits. Luckily, their mics were muted, a notable feature of Zoom not available in Google Hangouts, so the participants could moan under their breaths without disrupting the seminar. When the handsome, soft-spoken Martinez placed his hand over his heart, the participants imagined being cradled in his arms while he fucked them senseless. I want him to come so hard up my ass that his jizz ends up in my brain, one participant typed to another in Zoom's private chat feature. The Lotus Leaf Zen Center will hold daily online seminars throughout the quarantine. That's it.
Is there a question there?
There's no question. Nope. Just how did he spend his time? He wrote that for Vox.
Well, it makes me think if Ennis Nin was alive today, all of her Zoom conferences would end in cam girl action.
Totally. Oh my God, that's amazing. Thank you, Philip.
Yeah, it's funny, like, though, there have been a lot of people posting videos online of people who thought that their mics were off or cameras were off. It's been really funny watching the rest of the world get up to the video conference call level. Like there's this one of some mayor in some small town or something like that steps out of this COVID-19 meeting that they're having with the city council, and the city councilwoman, she's continuing on to talk about what they're talking about, and he goes into the bathroom and does not turn his mic off, and he just fucking rips that bowl to pieces, man. It is hilarious. And then everybody in the room is just laughing their ass off. There's another one I saw, this woman who just takes her laptop into the bathroom with her, just takes her pants down, just pisses, and then hikes her pants up. It's something anyone would do, but she forgot to turn off. So it's a public service announcement. Always check your mic and video settings.
Well, wasn't that in a Leslie Nielsen movie? Not the first Naked Gun movie. Well, maybe it was, where he's speaking at a podium with a clip mic and goes to the back. Anyway, whatever.
Who knows? Yeah, I'm sure it's a tried and true
80 slapstick comedy, exactly.
Yeah.
So, how do you think this will end? Do you have any predictions?
Well, I
know you are not the type of person who would say, what's going to happen is this. But what do you kind of predict?
Yeah, well, if somebody was going to say, look, we're all going to make a gentleman's bet. It's going to be $100, or gentlewoman's or gentlepersons or whatever. If we're going to make a bet, $100, and we each do a fan fiction version and we think what's going to happen and whoever's closest wins, what I would probably say is I think that the mortality rate for this virus will be lower than people thought, and that I think that the states and hospitals will rise to the occasion. There will be enough ventilators and whatnot. So I think it's not going to be like mass hysteria, panic in the streets. And then I think we're going to end up in a depression. Probably a full-on depression, like something worse than 2008 as far as like the economy goes. I think it's going to be pretty rough for a long time. And then I don't know that people are coming together so much because, you're sort of physically distant. But then again, there's all kinds of cool stuff. Like I've donated to whatever I could lately, because I feel like as a person who is able to keep working, I feel like it's my responsibility to help businesses keep going that I supported. Like, so, we donate to Feed ER, which is an organization in the Bay Area or the East Bay that you can give them money. They'll go spend the money at a restaurant that needs to stay open, and then they'll take the food to an ER where people who are working need to eat. So I think you'll see a lot of that kind of stuff. And I think people are going to really rethink how they spend their money. I mean, I'm not trying to be like a xenophobe or anything like this, but the fucking China can go fuck itself, you know? I mean, and not the people, with the government. And like, you know, I think that should not be a controversial statement. I mean, just based on human rights violations, ecological violations, all this stuff, like that government is super fucked up. They for sure did not tell people what was going on. They for sure disappeared people who were trying to get the truth out. So like, I'm going to be very careful with where my money goes in the future. And like, I've bought almost nothing like since this whole thing started, just as wanting to hold on to money to be able to divert it to where it really needed to go.
Yep.
So I think people will probably end up with sort of like a depression mindset where they're very careful with their money. They're very careful with their resources. And I think that's probably going to be pretty good for people. I mean, like just basic Dave Ramsey shit. I have a 3 to 6 month emergency fund saved. So if I was out of work tomorrow, I could live on beans and rice for 6 months, you know, and I think more people are going to adopt that sort of mindset. Like you're going to see a lot less like closets full of Supreme clothing and a lot thicker bank accounts going forward, you know, or at least that's what I hope.
Yeah.
What about you?
I think a bunch of things. I don't know. I'm kind of divided between believing it's going to play out in a way that makes me feel optimistic in the short term and pessimistic in the short term. I think long term, I'm pretty optimistic. Like eventually things will settle down, but I think the short term shakeout is going to be pretty bad because the American mindset of taking care of people is so uniquely selfish. I mean, America is an incredibly generous country in general. I don't mean to characterize Americans as selfish, but the way that it sort of functions with selfish capitalism as a driving force for what do we do with people who are the most at risk, I think that this could destroy the homeless population and people who are unemployed at the margins. Especially, you know, in San Francisco, all these people, like they're in close quarters, they can't quarantine themselves. A lot of them have mental issues or issues brought on by addictions that make them make bad choices. They have compromised immune systems. And I think that this could wreak a lot of havoc on that community, and then they get desperate, and then the streets get pretty fucking like even scarier than they already are. So that could happen. I also think that this is going to living in the Mission, a site of incredible gentrification, not like New York City style gentrification, but it's been pretty severe. I believe that we had no idea what gentrification or what a displaced population looks like until this. I think that this is going to shake out like every last remaining artist, bohemian, service industry worker, etc. I think that, I mean, I already know people who've already packed their bags and left for Arkansas, you know?
Yeah, that shit's tough. But I mean, I always have mixed feelings about that, you know, where it's like, of course you want a diverse city you don't want people to lose their homes. You don't want people to be pushed out or whatever. But historically, people have to move around. I mean, during the Dust Bowl, like there were, you know, itinerant farmers that were completely fucked and had to leave. And I feel like the artist is today's itinerant farmer in some ways in the Bay Area. You know, there's just nothing. Their services are not in demand, and they did not make the transition to the new economy. And not to say that they should have, but you know, it's just a fact. You know,
no, totally.
I'm not trying to be mean about it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, if you're living in San Francisco and you don't have any savings and you are currently out of work, and you get that $1,200 check or whatever is actually going to happen, I believe you have a choice. You can stay in San Francisco and just hope that you can somehow spin that $1,200, which is probably half your rent, and just endure, or you can use $40 of it for a bus ticket to get the fuck out of town, and that money could last you for 2 months in some other city if you're able to find some other people to live with.
Yeah,
right?
I saw a really funny meme that was like $1,200 Bay Area, and it was somebody just crying and it was
Yep.
$1,200 Mississippi, and somebody was like dancing with like like doing the money phone by their head.
Yep.
Um,
Exactly.
yeah, I mean, I think also like for the other side of the economy, like my company is doing just fine with everybody remote. So it's like, okay, if they realize everybody can work remote, do they really need, $2,000 square foot offices in San Francisco anymore?
Exactly.
I would love to take my salary and go to Mississippi with it. I mean, maybe not Mississippi because fuck that state, but Louisiana for sure, or Boise, Idaho, or something like that. I would love it. Like, I also don't want to be a tech worker here. Like, it
Yeah.
just seems to be the way it goes.
Well, I think another piece of that puzzle too is that one of my predictions is that in a more long-term sense, this might be the wake-up call that we don't need to be flying around the world all the time. We don't need to be
Mm,
constantly taking up tons of space. Like, we don't need to be commuting nearly as much as we do.
mhm.
And Monique played me this piece from this writer or stand-up comedian. I was unclear, but this idea of everybody goes to conferences, and well, I don't want to be responsible for so many carbon emissions, but you got to go to the conference. It's like, well, actually, you don't
Right.
need to go to the conference. And I think something else I brought up around contagion, and this is connected to the issue of China, the country. These ultra permeable borders, I think, are going to be less so. I don't want to sound like I'm pro Brexit or something like that, but like uh, the free flow of everything, uh, maybe that is not a purely inherently good idea, where everybody and
Yeah.
everything, where everyone and everything goes everywhere all the time.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like right now, like Rhode Island is mad at New York because people from New York are crossing into their border, and there's like two American states. It's like, whoa, like they're trying to build a wall up there. But yeah, it's like, an open, unchecked border. Like you could not manage a problem like this. I mean, like, okay, maybe the open, unchecked borders exist in this utopian world where everybody has healthcare and everything's cool or whatever, some Bernie Sanders fantasy. Maybe that's the case. I don't know. But if you were to like right now say, hey, no borders, nothing, like it would be fucking chaos. Like there would be disease everywhere. Like one of the controversial Trump things that was done was his earliest action was to just stop flights from China, which, if you're like a Chinese nationalist, seems really fucked up. But if you're like trying to keep people from coming here where the disease is, that, I mean, at a very basic level, that seems to make sense to me. Like like I'm sure there's like all kinds of other things I'm not thinking of. But if I would say there's people with a disease over here and there's a line and you don't let them cross the line, that seems like a good move. But who knows? That's just redneck logic, I guess.
Yeah. I just think it's going to get a lot of people, or maybe not. I don't know. I think what's funny is in these moments, I would hope that people would examine what's going on and put the brakes on to adjust according to the new reality. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, oftentimes the opposite happens. So, again, going back to medicine, you would think that with all the anti science, for example, that America has been increasingly trafficking in, this would be a moment where people would go, oh, we actually need these institutions and we depend on them to keep us alive and safe.
Mm-hmm.
And my folk remedies are ridiculous. However, I kind of think that folk remedies are going to do fine. That shit's here to stay, and it might even increase because people are scared.
Oh yeah, I mean, like for example, you're gonna for sure have people who are like, I took whatever the whole time and I didn't get anything,
Right.
and so it's like you can't prove the negative, right? Like, so yeah, maybe your Wolfsbane mixed with turmeric did keep the virus at bay. I don't know, or maybe it was the fact that you weren't at work for a month. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's
so with international travel and I just sort of wonder if this is going to be a moment for people to sort of put the brakes on so much of that or not.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think like I don't know how people will travel. It's hard to say, because people have different reasons for going places. I do know that the cruise industry is going to have to do a big old rethink. you know,
Yeah.
the idea of cramming a bunch of gluttons onto a floating petri dish seems like it's probably not going to be that cool. And also, people have finally learned the truth about how they don't pay taxes. Like, I'm so fucking glad that they did not get a penny of aid from the United States. I'm so fucking stoked on that.
Interesting. I wonder how that would work for Amazon, because Amazon doesn't pay taxes.
Well, I mean,
So
the
if
thing
they
is,
were ever in
though,
trouble, what would happen?
I don't know. But I mean, it's like the Amazon infrastructure is super important right now.
Oh no,
You know,
I'm talking about in like some other reality where Amazon is this titan that is in danger of falling for some reason, and every government goes, "You're not my problem."
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like I saw another meme that was pretty funny is that you should get back in aid what you paid in taxes, which is hilarious if you're anti-Amazon, but if you're like one of the 40% of Americans that doesn't actually pay income taxes because you get money back every year, then that logic is bad for you too. It's I don't know.
I have to say, I think I make an Amazon purchase about once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks. And I
Mhm.
think this is the longest I've gone without ordering from Amazon. I think I got what I need right now, except thankfully my friend offered, like, do you need to do laundry? I will come and pick you up. I have sterilized my laundry room. You can come do laundry here. And so we did, thank God, because the laundromats in my neighborhood are terrifying on a good day.
Oh man, I can't even imagine. That's got to be the worst. I would go on Amazon and get myself a wash tub and a bucket and live like a fucking hobo in the
That's pretty good.
1920s. Like that. That's what I would do. And I've also just basically been wearing the Fight Club uniform the whole time, like 2 pairs of black pants, 2 pairs of black shirt, 2 pairs of black socks.
Totally.
Like I've just been rotating to the same outfit for like a
That's
month.
great.
Um,
But right before we left her house, she asked, "Hey, is there anything you guys need?" Totally jokingly, I was thinking, "Oh, I was actually going to order a kettlebell from Amazon. That was going to be the only
mm.
thing I wanted to get from Amazon." And I go, "Yeah, if you have a kettlebell lying around that you don't use." And she's like, "Funny you should mention." And she had a 35-pound kettlebell. She was like, "This is too heavy for me to even get rid of, and I
Oh,
don't want it."
you got the 35 pounder.
I got a 35-pound kettlebell that I did not have to order from Amazon because my friend coincidentally had one that she wanted rid of. So that was
Nice,
good.
nice.
Oh,
That's the one I have. I wish I had a heavier one, but like in order to make my kettlebell heavier, I ordered. So I have a weight vest that's up to 50 pounds, and the way it works,
God.
it looks like a tactical vest. It's kind of like
Yeah.
it has like a bunch of what look like magazine pouches because it's basically what it is, and each pouch is a 2.5 pound weight, and you can take them out and do whatever with them. So I ordered pistol magazine pouches that I could cinch onto my kettlebell on either side of the horns so that I could add weight to my kettlebell. And so it's actually working pretty well. It looks like the most tactical kettlebell ever, which is pretty stupid. It's got like it's got like magazine pouches on it, but I'm able to add another 10 pounds to my kettlebell this way, which makes me very happy.
That's funny.
But yeah, man, kettlebells are sold out everywhere. Rogue Fitness is out of fucking everything.
Oh, wow. I'm glad I got one. Although 35 pounds, Jesus Christ, it's a workout just to walk it down the hall.
What's kind of cool about the everybody's adherence to the Russian weight system, like the pood, hat 1.5 pood, 2 pood, is that the jumps sort of just make you deal with the extra weight. So you'll just find yourself dealing with 35 pounds instead of like the 12-pound one that you might have bought or whatever.
Right, right. Interesting.
But yeah, it's a great tool to have. There's so many cool workouts to do with it. All the Dragon Door workouts are pretty cool. On it has a bunch of shit for free. There's one called Extreme Kettlebell Fitness, which is this like 30-minute workout that you do with just a kettlebell, and it is brutality.
Right on. What else? Anything else we want to touch on while we're doing this?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I felt kind of weird about this whole thing because this whole like I've been essentially like unbothered by it in some ways because I don't really go out at all. Like I'm like a real notorious homebody, like borderline agoraphobic, and so being in my house the whole time hasn't felt too terrible. But like other people seem to be losing their goddamn minds, man. It's interesting how, just an introversion in your personality or introverted personality seems to be thriving in the moment.
Yeah. I think the thing that's been getting me through is that, and I think, I don't know, maybe I recommend trying this for people who are having trouble, but I literally wake up every morning. I make a list of what I want to do that day, and I do those things, because I don't have outside forces deciding what I'm going to do each day, like go to work.
Mm-hmm.
I wake up and I make a list of the things that I need to take care of, and I make sure that those things happen. So my day is actually very structured.
Yeah, that's key.
I wake up, I meditate, I read for an hour, I eat breakfast, I check my email, I study Swift for 4 hours, I work out in between all of my sessions of studying, I work on music in the evening, and then I watch TV for a couple hours with Monique. And it's
Yeah.
and it's great. I'll just dip into the news once every 2 to 3 days just to make sure that, a nuclear reactor isn't exploding near my apartment.
Yeah.
And if nothing is really going to affect me very, very specifically, I don't need to know. I don't care.
Yeah. The news is absolutely worthless, man. I mean, it's just like there's pretty much nothing that you'll learn in an average news cycle that will benefit your life in any possible way. Like, there just isn't. Like, and then if you're an idiot, the news cycle is going to fuck you up. Like those clowns that, I mean, I feel really bad for them, but those people that ate their aquarium cleaner thinking it was
Oh
the
my
same
God.
chemical. Man, it's weird. Like, people were trying to blame that on Trump. It's like, God damn, man. Like, that is really like that's a Darwin Award shit right there.
Yeah.
And if people don't know what we're talking about, basically this couple heard Trump say that hydrochloroquine could possibly be a cure for coronavirus, and then they go and they're like, hey, I think we got some of that, and it's like basically a koi pond chemical cleaning agent, and they go just scoop a little bit of it into their cocktail or whatever and drink it, and one of them dies and one of them is severely ill, and I feel terrible for the one that survived, because it's like, obviously she's not a fucking genius and her husband's gone now, but Jesus Christ, man, like, I mean, if it says not for human consumption on it, don't eat it.
That's fair.
Yeah. And the same thing, it's interesting too, like you see with like natural remedies and stuff, people recommend some really dangerous shit in that circle. Like all the people who have you like doing bleach enemas and all that shit, man. It's just like just listen to doctors, man. Like, they're gonna get most of your shit right. Like, every once in a while there's like a Lorenzo's oil thing and they can't fix it, then some outsider genius figures it out. But like, chances are you're not that outsider genius. Like,
The
especially
chances are.
yeah, if you have time to listen to this show, it's not you, man. I'm sorry. It's just not. It's not me. It's not you either.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think also just, again, I generally feeling pretty optimistic. And the thing that I'm most focused on is just not feeling anxious, because that is the one thing that does nobody any good. Even if my life is falling apart in a way that I don't even realize right now, even if things are worse than I realize, anxiety is not actually going to help me. It's not going to help keep me agile to deal with and account for the changes that are happening in the world.
Yeah.
I just sort of need to be positive and alert, not anxious and worried,
Yeah.
no matter how bad it
I mean,
gets.
that's what every like death camp biography says, like Man's Search for Meaning, that Viktor Frankl book. He basically said, like, if you had a positive outlook, or not, you don't even have to be like some soft-headed hippie happy-go-lucky type. Like, you could just not concentrate on bad shit and get yourself along pretty well. But I hope that people use this moment as a wake up, because honestly, like, this isn't the worst possible virus that could have ripped across the world. And we were fortunate enough for it to happen during a pretty up time in the economy where there isn't a whole lot of other bad shit going on. I mean, imagine if this had happened during 2008. Like, people would be super fucked.
Yep.
And not that they aren't fucked now. Like, there's like some 3.5 million people on unemployment last week alone. I mean, all that shit's going to come home to roost.
Yep.
Like, I remember, like, I read Andrew Yang's book over last summer, and he made like a really terrifying case for how bad it would be if 1.4 million truckers were put out of business through automation.
Yep.
And it's like, man, okay, there's twice that number that are just not just truckers, but all over the place that are out of commission now.
Yep.
And it's not like the economy is still humming along with robots. It's mostly frozen.
Yep.
So I guess the thing is, as bad as this is, it could be worse. And we're probably going to get another chance to live through some terrible shit again. Like Chris Tyree from Popcorn, Piss and Vinegar, he said, I'm tired of being a witness to history. And I think we're going to be witnessing a lot of more historical craziness.
It was interesting. I didn't even think of this, but Monique, my wife, pointed out the woman who lives across the hall from us, Margarita, she's 102 years old. So just thinking of that in perspective, she was born sort of around Spanish flu. She witnessed World War II. She watched her son go off to the Vietnam War, and it was not good to him. Like, we talk about 9/11 and 2008 as if they were like these civilization destructive events. And like, they actually weren't. They were really bad for a lot of people. But
well, if you're in Afghanistan or Iraq, I would say that those are pretty life-changing events.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But I guess more to the point is that, yeah, the history keeps going on, and this is our really fucking awful moment. And we just got to do everything we can to get through it in one piece.
Yeah, and I think like this is a lot of people, this is the first real adversity they've ever lived through.
Absolutely. That's kind of what I was getting at. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, and it's the first thing that's really hit home. I mean, like, 9/11 happens, big deal if you're in New York, right? But if you don't live in New York, it's mostly a thing you saw on TV.
Yep.
And then the other side of it is, all the wars that have been fought somewhere else.
Yep.
Even at the 2008 economy, like most people didn't end up homeless. Like definitely a lot of people did, but not everybody. A lot of people made it through.
Yep.
This one, like I said, I think that we're going to find that the death rate's going to be a lot lower. And that's not me just trying to like be positive. It just seems like as they test more people, they find out that more people had it. It's just a math number, like it's not 4%, it's 1%, which is still a shitload of people, but it's not enough to like if you snap your fingers and 1 million people disappeared, the world would not end. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, like right now, people are like dying at a higher rate from what they've done to themselves with cheeseburgers, but we still have cheeseburgers.
Right. But of course, it's important to remember, yes, it's adding to that cheeseburger number. It's not replacing that cheeseburger number.
Yeah, totally. That's a really good point. But I think that I hope people think about what was challenging for them during this time, and then they make plans, because it's going to happen again, man. Like my wife always made fun of me for being super paranoid about shit and like having extra cans of things and being, armed or whatever. And now all those decisions look pretty good to a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, I think I sort of said this on our last episode in some form, but we are the ancestors of survivors. We're not the ancestors of people who didn't give a shit and didn't think anything bad would happen.
Right.
We're the ancestors of people who were just paranoid enough to make plans and have provisions and make sure that they were going to live another day.
Yeah. If you were going to have done something that you could have done in the last year in preparation for this, what would you have done? Like 12 months ago to this date, somebody says this event is for sure going to happen. What are you going to do? What would you do differently?
I mean, I would have shaved off of a lot of expenses for sure and saved a lot more money. And that is honestly the number one thing, right? I'm mostly worried about money. 12 months would not be enough time for me to figure out a career option that could have protected me from this. And also, like I said before, again, sorry to refer to the previous episode, our Contagion episode, but this pandemic is idiosyncratically affecting my particular industry. The next global catastrophe or even local catastrophe could be one that affects another sector and one in which I'm fine. Like if there was a massive power outage across California for a long time, everything would be fucked, but I would be fine. We don't even take credit cards. We're a cash business that serves alcohol. Like we do great. But
or even something regional, like, there's like nuclear weapons go off in the Southeast, like you would still be employed as a bartender in the Bay Area.
Yes. So money would protect me from almost everything. Because, what's going to endure this situation are people with power, people who own property, people who have money in reserves, people who have something to leverage are going to come out
Mhm.
ahead, and the people with less power are going to suffer more. I mean, this is just a situation where things are exaggerated from their normal state in some way.
Yeah, I was just looking at my bookshelf last night. I was like, man, like I really did not need this stuff. You know, like, I mean, I like to have it. Books are kind of my thing, graphic novels or whatever. But I was just looking at like, I added up the price of all my omnibus edition comics. I was like, man, if I had been able to put that into the S&P 500 right now when the economy rebounds, it would be worth a lot more money than
Oh,
these comics
yeah.
will ever be.
Yeah.
You know, that's one thought. Or the other thought I had was like, man, I really don't have good body armor. And there's a few tactical items I wish I had that I did not invest in that I'm kicking myself for now.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's really made me rethink casual purchases. Like, because somebody will recommend a book to me, and instead of just writing it down, I'll just one click it to my house in the first edition, if possible.
Right.
And that's just like a habit I had from getting lazy. And I tell myself, oh, it's in my budget, but I often go over my budget for that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And, which is just the truth. And, my wife has like packages of fast fashion shit show up all the time. And we both of us were just like, clothes and books can go fuck themselves. We have enough of each.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's mad at me because I didn't buy an AR-15 when I should have. I was like, okay. I was like, you're right.
You should have. Jesus
Yeah.
Christ. Uh,
Which I don't think I'm going to get an AR. I think I'm going to get a Mini 14.
I barely know what you're talking about, but Godspeed you to your happiest purchase.
Yeah. But yeah, so I think like our self-help for nihilists point here should be work on your finances when you're able to this coming year. A lot of my friends have made fun of me because I don't have a motorcycle right now. And the reason why I don't is because I wanted to have 6 months of expenses saved up before I made any big purchase like that. And now I can't ride anywhere and I don't feel as freaked out as I would if I had bought a motorcycle.
Yep.
So I guess all that boring shit that they tell you to do seems to work.
Yep. It is.
What sort of industry do you think might emerge from this? Like after 2000,
yeah,
like after 2008, I had a friend who had a moving truck, and his job became clearing out foreclosed homes, and he made really good money doing that. It's an interesting thing. Like, I have a truck, I have strong arms. Let's do it. Like, what do you think might work?
I don't know. I guess it depends on how long this goes on and how much of an economic fallout there is and how many people become how destitute.
Yeah.
I definitely think that this will get at least our culture to reassess its approach to health, the health industry, the healthcare industry. I don't know how. I can't even imagine what that means. I don't think it's like suddenly we'll be single payer within a year or something like that. But I think it'll definitely change what Americans think of the way healthcare works. But beyond that, I have no idea. I just don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to say. Like, I read some stat that said like at least 30% of restaurants and bars would not be coming back.
For sure. I totally believe that, because restaurants and
But
bars rarely last very long anyway.
yeah,
So
yeah. And I mean, I have a lot of friends that own bars and restaurants, and really, I feel fucking terrible for them.
yep.
But, the other side of it is like, there's probably at least 30% of restaurants and bars that deserve to get shut down because they suck.
But will it be the right 30%?
That's the thing. That's the thing that's terrible is like, this really cool small restaurant is not going to survive, but Chipotle has deep enough pockets to weather it,
Yep. Well, I mean, I think that's another big question. One of the biggest questions is, what are landlords going to do? Because if you're a bar and you're not paying rent, if you own your bar, you can probably hang on for a while because your expenses while you're closed are virtually non-existent. But
Yeah.
if you're having to pay rent on a closed bar, you're kind of fucked. And I mean, I feel like that's a question that every landlord has to fucking face right now, is if every landlord in America, never mind this $1,200 thing, if every landlord in America just said, hey, this one's on us, 1 month free for everyone, what it would do to preserve the American economy is immeasurable, right?
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see a mixture of like libertarian and lefty hippie things take off at the same time. Like, for example, like, what if we suddenly forgave the student debt of just the people working in ERs right now, and working in hospitals and things like that? Like, well,
Right.
let's, as like kind of a tip, like a thanks, guys. And then we could see, okay, did that improve the economy in any way? Did that improve people's lives in any way? Like, just try out these things, like do little experiments and things like that. Or,
Yeah.
could we earmark 2% of, could we make it a thing where every country in the world says, okay, we're all going to agree to take our military budgets down 2%, and we're going to take that 2% and move it over to pandemic response teams. Like, how cool would that be?
Yeah.
And then those things could be like, here's the libertarian thing, is like states could decide what they wanted to do and individuals could decide what they want to do. And then, maybe, you restrict some local laws on things like, maybe you don't need as much licensing to make food and bring it around to people or something like that. Like, I don't know, but
Right.
it's weird though. Like this, I'm a lifelong fan of apocalyptic and nuclear book stories and whatnot. And like, in a lot of those books, people come together and they form these communities and they get this like back to the land agrarian thing. But the mere fact that you can't really interact with other people closely is really weird. Like in my building, like most people are really friendly with each other normally, but now we're like skittering around each other like they work for the fucking Stasi.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so weird. And like that joke, it's like I used to cough to cover up a fart. Now I fart to cover up a cough.
Right.
It's like this weird distrust with people. Like my friend Scott, I had to drop some parts for him, scooter off to his house today. And he was like, yeah, you can just leave the packages on the porch. I'm like, you don't have coronavirus and haven't been anywhere. And I don't have coronavirus and I haven't been anywhere. So why wouldn't we just hang out on your porch for a minute and talk? But yeah, it's just weird. Like it's just these extra steps that people are taking, I think, are making people sort of standoffish.
Yeah.
Maybe for good reason, maybe.
It can only do good.
Yeah.
For a while.
But I don't know about you, but I've been calling more people and texting more people and just checking in with people more often. Yeah.
Totally.
So I bet, like, man, it's hard to know because, like, it's not like it's a war. It's like, okay, today the virus ends. But I wonder, like, it will just naturally have run its course by next year. Like if you did nothing and just let people fucking die, by this time next year, it would be mostly over. I wonder if people will maintain any of the practices. For example, if people are used to washing their hands as much, I imagine it would make the flu season after way less destructive. Could you imagine that people are like taking all these precautions during a normal time?
Yep.
Yeah.
For sure.
I don't know. Man. That's about all I have to say, man.
Yeah, me too.
I hope everybody's doing well out there, and write in, talk if you want to.
Yeah, please reach out to us. Absolutely. I actually have to get going soon because I have a Zoom-based cocktail party with my family. So.
Oh, that sounds pretty fun.
Oh, it'll be great. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. You know what? I think that, like, the one thing that I will make one prediction, I think that there will be a company that emerges in the next 12 months that really nails conference calling, because now it's just good enough. Because like people who work in companies just kind of deal with it. Like even if you have like nice equipment, like at the office I work at, it still kind of sucks.
Yes.
There's no like Porsche of conference software.
It's true.
It's all terrible. And I wonder, with all this demand in place of people like FaceTiming and stuff like that, or that there will be just things where people are like, hey, this should be just more UX for average people. Like all this shit is built for office workers.
Yep.
It's not built for normal ass people. So will the TikTok or Instagram of conferencing emerge? It would be pretty badass, I think. I hope that it happens. So if you're out there, nerds, let's make it happen.
Fuck, I wish I'd learned coding earlier. I could do that.
Yeah. I think that's what everybody who wants money thinks.
Yeah.
I wish I had learned coding, but it was so fucking hard. I feel like you have a mind for it, but like I open that shit up and I just want to cry.
I'm loving it. It's so fun. I'm having a lot of trouble with Boolean logic, but I love the problem solving aspect of it is super fun.
Yeah, that you think it's fun means that you will be very good at it eventually. Because like, I mean, for real, because like all the people I know that's how they started. Like my buddy Jerry Abear, who's my age, we went to high school together. He's been out here in the Bay Area as long as I have, and he fell in love with computers in high school when it marked you for forever virginity.
Yep.
And he just fell in love with the problems of it. And he's done really well because he was able to learn really fast doing it. And whereas like I look at it, I'm like, I sure hope I get a better job. And that's not the way to go. You know, like you have to kind of like love it. And it's good to hear that you are loving it.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll work together one day. How fun would that
Okay.
be?
We'll figure it out.
All right.
All right. Good talking to you.
Talk to you later. All right. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.